Hi, everybody. Just to show my age, I am going bold. This is an early 30-year-old talking to you right now. The biggest thing that I did want to tell you is in this session, there are going to be points where I would suggest you take notes. I'm not sharing any fluff stories. I'm going to let you guys have a couple little secrets and a couple little calculations that you can use for your own organizations. What I'm going to do first is you see a word over there that says a love story about sales playbooks and data. Real quick question. Who knows what a sales playbook is? All right. So today, what we're going to look at is why sales books matter, right? And we're going to focus on your return on effort. Just FYI, I don't do monologues. So I might just call up on you just for the heck of it, right? This is going to be an interactive session. And one of the things that I do want to do is when we talk about return on effort, you probably have an idea. Now, sales playbook is a unique term. We'll get into it. But a return on effort is pretty self-explanatory. So here's the kicker. Who here has heard of ROI, return on investment? Who here has heard of return on effort? That's exactly how the market is. So let me give you a little bit of an idea about who I am, why I'm here, why Joy invited me, and why you might care to listen. If not, hopefully my humor will actually entertain you. And if that's not the case, I don't know what else to do for you. So the first thing, obviously, just like any presentation, I do apologize to the media team. Apparently I have to come over here. We're going to take a look at some of the basic agenda items. I classified it as this. So what is a Sercan? That would be me. And after that, we're going to cover a little bit about basically, literally why ROE actually matters and how your ROE in your business is going to determine how successful your ROI is going to be, right? After that, we're going to take a look at how does sales books and ROE impact your pipeline and revenue. Who here can give me a quick idea about the difference between pipeline, revenue? Take a guess. Okay, we're getting warmer. We're talking about the same concept, not necessarily the same angle. So she said, isn't pipeline like closed revenue? You haven't closed. Perfect. There you go. My apologies. That is indeed true, right? Your pipeline is how much dollars are sitting in basically your business, right, that you haven't activated yet. Now, does that mean you're going to activate 100% of it? There is no world. If you had done that, you wouldn't have to be here. But the biggest thing that I can tell you is your ROE and sales playbooks are going to help you understand how you can get better ROI. And at the end, I'm going to show you what you can do to improve your business's ROE. And at the very end, we're going to do a quick live workshop. So now, the other thing is desired outcomes. I suggest you always do this for any of your presentations, as well as your internal assessments, your brainstorming sessions. One of you is in the bathroom yelling some numbers to the other one. Always have a desired outcome before you have any kind of brainstorm. Because at the end of the day, the desired outcomes are kind of like your OKRs, right? Everything you say or you do should have a purpose. And what's the purpose? Well, you're going to get to know me a little bit, right? And Joy knows this. I'm an open book. I might not respond to you in 24 to 48 hours. I'm not UPS, but I will always respond to you, right? The other thing is understand what a sales playbook is and how it works. I will go into the sales playbooks a little bit right now. The most important part about understanding a sales playbook is that it's a strategy component. By itself, it's meaningless. It's a tool. But you guys need to understand how to use this tool because over the last 7 years, I've been helping Fortune 500 companies put in 1.4 and get in $28 million with it, right? So the last one is learn how to leverage the Pareto law for business development. Who here knows what a Pareto law is? What if I said 80-20 rule? All right, couple heads. So when I say 80-20 rule, tell me your perception, or what do you understand from the 80-20 rule? Go ahead, anybody. Yes. That's basically the premise, right? 80% of your results are going to come from the top 20% of your effort. Now, we're talking about business, right? This is not athletics. So our effort is actually going to be inputs. So we're going to take a little bit of a look at how you can leverage Pareto law to be able to increase your effectiveness. And if you catch the drift, ROE is like a frame, right? Return on effort is for efficiency and effectiveness. The efficiency part comes with leveraging a sales playbook. The effectiveness part comes with leveraging Pareto law to understand how you're doing with your sales, or your team is doing with your sales, right? And at the very end, obviously, we want you to be able to identify the importance and the application of ROE into your business. All right, so a little bit about me. I graduated from UT. I'm an alumni of 2014. Just like Joe said, I was one of the OG alumni, right, the first cohort. My company, Tembo Education, we provided early childhood education to 0 to 6-year-old children in the slums of the world. We became the only U.S. representative in the world's largest social enterprise competition, all that kind of good stuff. As I've said, if my humor doesn't entertain you, take a look at the accolades, and maybe you'll find something interesting about me. But the most important part for me is, out of all these things here, you will see that we've contributed and been participating in accelerators and incubators all around the world, right? We're Mass Challenge gold winners. We've been through Hold Prize, MIT Media Lab, Google Exchange, you name it. One of the things that I can tell you is, stepping in here, there's a lot of improvement going on, and I've heard some really interesting numbers that I know for a fact did not occur in some of those other accelerators, incubators. Leverage your network. UT has become a monster, and I promise you that. So leverage your network. Don't let go. The other thing is, remember, every startup, 92% of the startups fail within the first 5 years. Learn how to fail fast, and this is going to help with that, right? Because that's when you fail forwards. All right, so a couple other awards, accomplishments. The presentation will be with Joy after this, so if you guys want to go ahead and click on some of those links, see what it looks like, I urge you to do so. For another reason, I also know a couple of you guys are doing really interesting projects with traffic or some legs, right, underneath it. I would suggest start looking at understanding how you can be more involved in media. Not by paying for it, but earning it. So at the very end, I'm going to give you a couple quick tips and then open up for questions. All right, so let's get into it. My name is Sercan, pronounced exactly like that. Haven't been in sales and entrepreneurship for a long time. I have 2 jokes for you. One of them is, I'm not knighted, it's just a Turkish name. That's usually my go-to for cold conversations. Or if I have a little bit of acquaintance, I say, you know how you remember it, Sir Elton John, without fame, without talent. All right? So remember however you want to remember it. Now, currently, as Joy said, I've been a part of InsideOut, and I had the fortune of being one of the early employees and helped kind of shape the inside sales market space. When I say inside sales, real quick, what do you think that means? Now, if you know what that means, kudos to you. That's been the trend in the last 4.5 years or so. What do you think inside sales means? I'll ask it this way. Have you guys heard of demand generation? Okay. Lead generation. What do you think is the difference between demand generation and lead generation? All right. I thought I had a bad night's sleep. Okay, so here we go. Demand generation is very simple. Demand generation is pretty much marketing, right? You're trying to establish awareness. You're trying to get people to consider you. If there's a conversion happening from marketing, that's going to be referrals, contact us, right? Doesn't necessarily guarantee revenue. So you need to turn that demand into a lead that you can put into your sales cycle. That's what inside sales departments do. Think of inside sales like a center of excellence for sales operations. What they do is they take the leads from marketing that are qualified or quality, right? Either further qualify them for pipeline or qualify them for pre-sales so that the conversations that your sales representatives in your teams, and that might be you, and I promise you the last thing you want to do is waste your time in an empty conversation, especially when you're, grassroots operations. So it's very important to understand how you need to qualify to figure out what your pipeline is, what your potential revenue is, and how that might change, right? So what I've been helping is helping Fortune 500 companies, high growth companies to understand how to do this, understand how to leverage it, and you will see how it comes together, because another quick tip that I'm going to give you, and you guys are going to see too, you can't have all your salespeople doing this kind of stuff. because you do need a steady flow of regular labor, and you also need a steady flow of testing. And I'm going to get to that in a second. The other thing that I do is, and you're going to see in the future too, I also am a serial entrepreneur. I had the fortune, we were talking with Joy, being next to Phil, and I am a co-owner of a residential cleaning franchise. I've been a co-author and a presenter for the book, The Last Key to Success. And I currently do consult with TGUS and IV execs, IV execs as a consultant on the side. By the way, you don't need experience for TGUS and IV execs. If you have specific experience, niche, you can also join. Usually, if you're a junior, $250 to $350 per hour, just saying. I know what it's like to be a student. All right, so going into it. Some of the logos you see up there are my direct customers, right? But like I told you, high growth startups like Stripe. When T-Mobile was my client, they were trying to do their business-to-business 5G initiative. We did their rollout. That project did a 14-fold, so at the moment, that's about 140 million or so. And what I'm going to show you and touch on are literally the things we've built as a tool, the sales playbook, and how we assessed it to make sure that we had continuous improvement. It's not necessarily something that's rocket science, but like I said, just fair warning, there's going to be some math, right? All right, so let's get into it. We are going to have a little bit of an interactive session, as I told you, so let's start with it. Now, most effective revenue strategies. Whether you do it through playbooks or campaigns, they're all based on testing. All based on testing. You might have heard of sales tactics like SPIN, right? Situation, problem, implicated need payoff, BANT, budget, authority, need, timeline. You need to have these kinds of information. I can tell you this, that's true, but in the real world, good luck getting all of them together at once, right? So especially if you're going after big business, especially if you're going after businesses, right? Consumer market is a little bit different, B2C, but B2B is always like that. I'm going to snooze this guy real quick. Sorry about that. Apparently I'm getting a refresh. There you go. Bye-bye. All right. So what I want to do is I accidentally put it up there. Thank you, slides. All right. So real quickly, you've seen the answer, but let's pretend you didn't. All right. Just bear with me. All right. So the percentage of marketing teams that go testing before going live. Now, you've seen the number, so I'm going to put it back up there. Do you think this number is higher than you expected or lower than you expected?
Lower.
There's a reason for that. In marketing, AI and machine learning has taken the testing side, and now, because at the end of the day, what you're doing is replicating human behavior based on data, right? So if a picture moves to the left or to the bottom, you change the tagline, change the colors, whatever the case is. There is enough data about that since print days, right? So you can make the machine do that. But at the end of the day, even with all that technological advancements, right, you still have 73% of marketers testing before going live. Now, is this a surprise to anybody? No, right? Well, let's take a look at engineering. Is this about what you expected? Is it higher, lower? Right? It's pretty much expected. And to be honest, with engineering, whether it's a software or a hard product, right, you're going to need to have some fail-safes. Last thing you want to do, if anybody's doing software here, I know there were a couple, right, or if you're doing anything that has to do with manufacturing, having a defect, especially in early stages, you got to iterate quick, but it can't be sloppy, right? So engineering does need to test rigorously. Cool question. Have you heard of the Boeing crashes, the 737 Maxes and all that kind of stuff? Okay, so that was an engineering debacle, right? Because that wasn't tested properly. So big problems occur when you don't test in engineering. Here's the kicker. All right, back six over there. You guys are literally phasing out. So I'm going to call you guys in. So sales teams, give me a number. What percentage of sales teams do you think test before going live? All right, we got a brave one, 25%. I'm going to be like an auctioneer. Higher or lower? Higher or lower? Higher, higher. 50 or 60? Okay, someone has been drinking already. All right. Anybody else? Any other guesses? No? 10? You sneaky dog. All right. So here's the kicker. The reason it's 10% is because, and you guys are going to do this too if you haven't done it already, because everybody does it, especially in the startup phase, right? You got a lot of hats to wear. This goes out the window. You do your damn best to do your market research, the SWOT, and we're going to touch on those in the go-to-market and growth strategy stuff in the slides. But when it goes out the door, because you're trying to make sure your product is well, you're trying to make sure that you speak the right way to your prospect customers. What we always forget is, but when they're ready, how good am I? Am I doing the right things at the right place, in the right way, with the right tools? So what ends up happening is, and that's why you see those logos including Stripe, right? They come to us because they can't figure out how is it going to be that they're going to test in sales. Because the story in sales, and you will see this in your groups too, you will feel it. You will have your parents say it this way. Some people are born to be sellers. Oh, he can talk an Eskimo out of a hut or whatever the idioms are. I promise you it has nothing to do with that. It's about process. You can be a snake charmer, and I'm from Middle East. It's not working anymore, right? So what has happened over the last 6 years, especially in sales, is an understanding that sales isn't this rigorous process of who can talk who. It's based on how you approach the process of meeting the customer the way they want to and how they want to, which means it's process-oriented. So that's why we're going to touch about sales playbooks. And that's why we're going to take a look at return on effort, because that's what's going to tell you whether or not you can expect the type of customers, expect the type of revenue, or be more realistic about what your goals should be. Because I'm sure in here we talked a lot about goal setting and objectives. I don't think anybody has told you, shoot for the moon, land on the stars, something will happen, right? You can't set goals like that. All right, so let's get into it. Who here knows the show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia? Nice, my kind of people. So, for everybody else who doesn't know it, that frantic man that looks like he's having a panic attack is called the character Charlie. And what ends up happening is he gets so much into the weeds that he makes up a conspiracy theory based on mail because he's a mailman, right? And most of those organizations that you see up there was Charlie, because they're doing incredible things in certain areas, which covers or masks some of the horrendous pictures that actually occur in the rest. And you will see this with companies that get $12 billion valuation like deal, and then Bloomberg comes out with an article saying that this is like a family business of a bunch of people giving each other money. What's going on? That's because their cash flow is struggling. Why? Because they have big customers that come back, but the growth isn't as expected. They're growing, but it's not as expected. So they have to figure out shareholder value. Now, is this your problem with your organization? Probably not. But I can promise you this, one of the most important things that we learned at UT, and we said this many, many times over, if you prepare yourself and your operations to be small so you can get by, I promise you when the time comes to scale, you won't be ready. That's why it's not about luck. Luck happens to the people that are prepared. If you think big and understand how you can leverage these so that when you have the right teams and when you have the right systems, so you know what type of data to pay attention to, what kind of methodologies to use for your own benefit, when the time is right, you know how to bounce or pounce, right? So, with that being said, one of the things that I do want to show you is, at the end of the day, we talked about some of these companies, but let me ask you another quick question. That Charlie Day, this was a research done by Forrester, which then was implicated in the Gartner matrix as well because they're competitors. In 2021, they released data on how many of the organizations that they basically researched, keep in mind this is Forrester and Gartner, so anybody you can think of is in there. How many of those organizations do you think, right, had a strategy for growth? And how many of them were actually able to evaluate it accurately? So how many had a strategy and how many were able to actually accurately figure out a way to get there? Throw out some numbers. So the first one is big, the second one is small. Other than that, I got to tell you the numbers. That's no fun. Okay?
And of the one scratch record, I'm going to go with the 90-10 rule instead of the 80-20 rule.
So just like Joy said, 83% of the companies had a strategy. Out of those, 17% were actually even close to what they thought was going to happen, right? So if you think about that, right, think of the top 83 companies in the world. Only 17 of them actually met what they were trying to do in sales. That's a crazy number. So one of the things that I want to touch on is how do you actually go from that to that? I've used this word a couple times in the beginning, and I did say the premise of this whole revenue strategy, playbooks, campaigns is what? Do you guys remember? It starts with T. Okay, so that's a frame that we're going to use, right? So definitely, it's included in there, but it starts with the word or the letter T. What do you do to evaluate something or test an idea? The answer is literally in the question. It's testing, right? You test. But if you're going to test, right, anything, any of your strategies, methodologies, if you're going to test them, how do you think it's going to be tested in sales? Because it's not easy. Like everyone sells differently, right? Everyone has different networks. Everyone has different fortes. How do you test in sales? Because a test requires a control group, right? So that's why we're going to learn about sales playbooks, and that's why we're going to learn about return on effort and Pareto law, right? That's why those three are the desired outcomes. Because if you understand how to use those three, you can create any test you want in sales, however you want to construct it, right? So these are the building blocks, like your Legos back in the day before you build a house, all right? So let's get into it. How many of you already are doing getting some leads for your business, or there's some conversations with potential customers? Who had that chance already? Nice. Oh, there. Perfect. Okay. So here's the thing. The first time you were like, oh, we're going into a sales conversation, how did it feel? Okay. How do you feel now?
Nervous but more confident.
Okay. Do you know your conversion rate? Did any of them turn out to be customers?
Yeah.
Nice. How many?
I wouldn't know the specific percentage, but I'd say it's a pretty good number, like 75.
Okay. Here's why I said that. Because most of us get into that pitfall of looking like, okay, now I'm getting some traction. I got to focus on making sure there's care. I got to make sure that there's quality, that there's delivery, right? We go into operations mode. So one of the things that happens is during this mode, because certain things in marketing and sales can work out for themselves. You can have a great marketing campaign or build a marketing asset and then put some money behind it on Facebook or wherever you want to put it on Google, and then sit back and go like, I believe leads are going to come. Whether there is 3 leads coming from there or 5, you're going to be happy. But how many leads should you have received? Just because we have an audience doesn't mean we have demand. Just because you have demand doesn't mean that you're being considered. Just because you're being considered doesn't mean you're going to get them as a customer, right? That makes sense to everybody, right? That's just common human nature. But while you're doing that, and because we know that, right, when we're testing, the way we do that is instead of relying on subjectivity, right, you approach it from a strategic manner. So this is the fluff part. And then I'm going to give you guys formulas and math. So let's see if you can connect the dots. If not, I'm here for your questions, right? So the first thing that I want to do is when we think about sales playbooks, it's in itself self-explanatory, and we're going to go into the details. But basically what it says is this is how your sales operations should be done, right? In the gist of it. Now, in that element, the most important thing, and I cannot stress this enough, the most important thing is adoption and adherence. Here's what I mean. If I say, here's the 10 steps that you need to follow to become a world-class athlete, and I'm a world-class coach, you probably do those until you don't see enough traction and you will give up on it. This happens to the best salespeople because they're used to selling in certain ways, and they can't seem to get out of their own way to fulfill the data side. So we're going to touch on that. This also happens at the worst salespeople because they go like, I already don't know what the heck I'm doing. This is also confusing, so I don't want to do this. But here's what that does to your data. So if you don't have adoption, where your teams or yourselves are not using this properly, or you don't have adherence, you're like, I'll do those tomorrow. What's going to happen is your data is going to start getting skewed. Do you know what a skewed data does to you? Absolutely. You will assume wrong, so you will strategize wrong, and then everything will go wrong. Or your data won't get skewed, but there will be bias. Because you're going to be like, hey, let me be quick, real quick. I want to go have a date. I want to eat an ice cream with a panda, whatever you're doing in your personal time. But I promise you this, what will happen is you will go like, I'll do those later. They already said yes, I will do the sentiment of why they said yes later, and you'll forget about it. What's going to end up happening is in the future time, you're going to absolutely hate yourself because when you're pulling reports of why or why not things have or have not happened, you won't have it in place. That's why sales books are very important, sales playbooks, because it allows you to test with a standardization that allows you to look at data without worry, right? So that's the essence of a sales playbook. Gives you a standard and your team a standard so that you can make sure that your data you can take direction and insight from, right? So basically, a sales playbook is pretty much a strategic approach of a standard operating procedure. Now, we got a lot of young faces, so let me ask this as well. Who here knows what a standard operating procedure is? Nice. It simply says, hey, here's what your job function is. Here's how that task is done. Here's what you need to do. Here's which systems you need to do it in. Here's how you need to do it. Here's when you need to do it. Go do it. It tells you everything you need to do. Sales playbooks work the same way. What they do is they basically say, hey, day 1, go do your research. Day 3, it's an email day. Day 4, now you follow up with a call. It's your first call, don't leave a voicemail. Day 7, now we're in the second week. Give a call, leave a voicemail. Day 8, reach out over on LinkedIn, leave a comment. Don't be creepy, don't just send a connection request, right? All those strategic little components that become tactics, that become a methodology where there's a standard, and if everybody adopts and adheres to it, you're going to be able to actually do a test in sales. So, let's take a look at a sales book a little bit, right? Now, I've given you a basic description of the sales playbook, what it means, right? What do you think, like, man, I might have blurred these out a little bit too much, sorry about that. But basically, let me see if I have, yeah, I got a laser. All right, so this part is the cadence. Does everybody know what cadence means for us, entrepreneurs? Cadence is the series of activities that you follow to complete an objective, right? A cadence might be, hey, I need to go to the groceries, but before I do, I have to do these things. In sales, a cadence is, hey, when am I sending an email? When am I following up with a phone call? Should I use social on this? Am I changing my messaging so that I can A/B test it? All those things are within a cadence. And a cadence looks literally like this, and I know it's not necessarily well over there, but I can tell you this. It's like, hey, step 5, day 4, call number 2. Yes?
So for the companies that are in the incubator, one of the things that we've done is we did all the way like lead to cash.
Nice.
So I made them do a lead to cash diagram at the beginning of the year and then map out all the processes that come under that. So they understand it kind of slightly different way, but they get the concept.
Perfect. That's even better because then you can kind of see, obviously, when you develop a cadence, you also don't go like, here's what we're doing, guys, but everybody just do it on your own time, do it on your own way. It doesn't matter. We'll go get an ice cream with the panda later. So the important part is you also have to help them and help yourself by establishing what I would call foundational messaging, right? And we're going to do a live workshop about how that messaging should be crafted because that's one of the most important parts of a sales playbook. And the last part is obviously like a talk track or something. The reason I say talk track, scripts don't work. If you say something word for word, that's for you to practice. You need to go out there and actually have a real conversation. You cannot have a real conversation if you're trying to remember your next word. Prepare yourself, be a human, right?
So for those who are thinking, when we talk about the decision tree, and we're going through things and talking about the decision tree, like if the customer says this, then say that, that's exactly what he's talking about. So you can have a client give you back one answer, and you're going to take the conversation in one route. You can have somebody give you back a different answer, and now you're going to go this way, because your goal is still to uncover all the pieces to understand how to form your message in a way that that customer understands. And so there could be one or two or three different ways that that conversation could go and how that would play out long term.
Absolutely. So, looking at this, just to set it back into place. Every sales playbook should be tailored. Whether you're using something that worked well and there's look-alike situations and you want to leverage your know-how, great. You still need to go make an update. No company is the same. Just because they're in the same industry, same segment, same vertical, doesn't matter, right? They have differentiation factors. Maybe their tonality is different. Maybe their campaign is based on an event when the other one was based on a form. There are a lot of things that affect how you execute something. So don't be lazy. Every time you have an idea about growth and you want to go like, well, how do I take it there? You got to start thinking a little bit about like, okay, I need a set of activities. I need to figure out what those set of activities should be like, where they should be, how they should interact with each other, when they should be. Okay, so what is the messaging going to be like? Gotcha. Well, what kind of differentiation factors? Rebuttals, right? Cheat sheets. Why am I so insistent on this? Out of all the clients I had, just last year, I did 84 sales playbooks. 13 of them tanked. The rest of them were about 78% return, which, if you think about it, for sales organizations, that's about a 1.7 markup, right? And that especially is good, especially if you're talking about a 3-month ramp and a 6-month pilot. So what that means is, the reason I'm super stuck on this, every time we had a bad sales playbook or a sales playbook that did not work, we did not have the right enablement assets for the people. And this includes you. If you're your own salesperson, you better go make sure you have some supportive documents, right? You might not have a case study, but you know what? You can establish a use case for your business. There's a difference. You might not have a logo, but you can establish a use case to say, in these situations, we have seen these things. This is how we reacted. This is what helped. Hope it helps you too. Even that will get you leads. But more importantly, if you're sending someone sales messaging, that should not be marketing messaging. You should not be like, hey, check out this thing we created. You would like it. You don't know me. You might have done research on me. You don't know me. So at the end of the day, in your sales messaging, those elements, like a use case, is used for solidification, not purpose, right? You have to have a value proposition. You have to be addressing something that's tailored and solidify your angle so that they can see you're worth it, right? But you also need those assets. Just like Joy was talking about, like you have to have a decision-making tree so you know you're not stuck in a conversation, you're comfortable with it. You have to have collateral that supports your arguments, even if it's third party. Best example, when we were doing T-Mobile, nobody cared about the T-Mobile assets. I'm T-Mobile. It's coming from T-Mobile. Would you believe that it's objective? You would believe it's objective? Come on, man. You would think T-Mobile is going to share something with you that might make T-Mobile look second best. Definitely not. So at the end of the day, what's important is, this is why I said media, right? Find out how you can build some affiliations where you do some bartering. If you're doing, let's say, you're trying to do something in accounting, right? Offer your services for free, get the data, get the marketing, put them on as one of your branded items, right? Get some experience, and at the same time, build your credibility. So this is why sales plays matter a lot, because when you think about it, now I'm going back and going like, hey, wait a second, I need that asset. Hey, I also need this. So how do you all hone it in? How do you bring it together, right? That's why you need the ROE. It's a frame. Because if you just think about all the things you might need to be effective and the best you can be in sales, you will never get out of that hellhole. It won't be. So the most important thing for any one of us is to understand how the return on effort perspective, frame, approach could help us understand where and how to generate sales playbooks for its effectiveness purposes, right? So when you think about it, if it's an efficiency and effectiveness measure, which doesn't usually go together, just so you know, right? The things you use for efficiency are not necessarily things you use for effectiveness or vice versa. That's why this is an interesting tool. ROI is not like this, right? ROI is about effectiveness, or very simply put, and we'll cover it too, what did I put in? What did I get out, right? ROE, it encompasses many things from marketing and sales to build its data. And I'm going to show you how, and I'm going to share the formula. The most important part of return on effort is it allows you to analyze how long for something and how many activities for something. That's the crazy part. So when you think about it, what it's trying to do is allow you to understand what is required for you to succeed at your desired outcome. How long does that take? What do you need to do as an effort to get that return? And if you can cut down on that, that improves your efficiency. But to cut down on that, you probably need to become a little bit more effective. You see how it affects it on both sides? So when you think about it, there's a whole bunch of KPIs in marketing, and you've gone through some of these probably. You might know them better than I do, to be honest with you. I'm not a marketer, right? The most important thing that I've always seen is when you think about marketing, right, and you're measuring pipeline, you're measuring engagement, whether it's opens, clicks, traffics, right, online traffic, whatever you want to talk about. And then you have the sales side, which is going like, here's how much dollar value that I brought. Here's how many demos I did, right? But when you think about it, there's a gap between those two. Let's see if we can figure this out. Right? This is the clue. There is a gap between marketing and sales. We're going to discover it together. That's why the return on effort is a frame, an approach for decision making, right? It's not something like a process where you give to someone and go like, go do return on effort. And they're going to be like, sure, boss, but I don't know what that even means, right? Because you can't. You use return on effort to understand how to analyze properly, right? Give you a compass. And finally, why does it matter so much? We talked about sales playbooks, giving you some standardization, organizing chaos for your sales, right? We talked about return on effort, helping you understand its efficiency, effectiveness, okay? But most importantly, this allows you to maximize your sales playbook. Because one of the most common things that I see, and I just got off of a consulting call before I came here. Their thing is, their team is doing fine, okay? They have all the assets they need, cool. They have exceeded their sales quota by 27% last year. Good job. Why are we talking? Because they have no idea how they did it. So now they're under the gun because the first quarter went horrible. So they were like, what happened? We were supposed to bloom. So now they're in diagnosis mode, right? That's what the problem is if you don't know what you're doing, then you won't know. Even if it fails, that's okay, because now you know it doesn't work that way, right? So you got to test. And that's why it's important, because it maximizes the test results from sales playbooks. And here's the kicker. We talked about it being efficiency and effectiveness. What it does at the end of the day, because everything's about dollars, right? Whether you want to get it or not give it away, one way or another, right? It comes back down to dollars. If you use sales playbooks effectively and you do the ROE analysis properly, I promise you, your cost of goods sold is going to go down, and it's going to go down quick and big. And the other thing that it's going to help with is cost of operations, especially sales operations, which, keep in mind, you can ask any organization how or when they track their cost of sales operations. If they even tell you a good number, I'll be shocked. Because it's always going to change. Oh, well, it was great. Then we had attrition, so we had to hire and we had to train. That's a part of the sales life, right? So having a practice that consistently can bring the cost down, that's why it's important. So, go-to-market or growth strategies. Now, anybody here with their companies or their ideas are sitting here right now because they're like, I am having a blast of a time. Everything is going exactly the way I want to. I don't need to grow. I don't even know why I'm here. That person doesn't have to worry about this. Everybody else, whether you have a startup, early stage, whether you're at the growth stage, whether there's maturity, even when you want to do differentiation or product differentiation, you still come back to, okay, so how are we going to take it to market? Even if it's the red version of the white one, you're still going to be like, well, you know, old ladies don't buy the red one, so how are we going to make sure we market it properly? There's always going to be a growth go-to-market aspect of your ideas, no matter what stage of the company you're in your cycle. So, a couple things. You've done some GTM aspects, right? You tried to grow. You went out there, earned some customers, talked to some prospect customers. Did you do these things? Did you establish business objectives? Damn. Okay. So nobody established business objectives at all? Okay. So let's put the business objectives one side. Have you guys done a SWOT? Like a, perfect. There you go. MCB is make, collaborate, buy. It's another way to assess some of those things, right? Market or competitor research. Did you look at your competitors to see if you have direct competition, indirect competition, what the market is like? We have a great resource in IBIS World. I don't know if it's still available. Maybe I'm aging myself a little bit. But IBIS World reports used to be free for us in the library. That thing is a lifesaver. Do you know how much IBIS World reports cost? Thousands. Like janitorial market space reports cost you $3,000 plus. Imagine what it's going to be like when you say, hey, give me SaaS. Right? That's going to go $10,000 plus. And the main reason I'm telling you this is because it will always have a 5-year projection and a past 5-year analysis. So do yourselves a favor, as much as possible, for however long you're here. I tried, by the way, to go back to the library, get more IBIS World reports, and then I called Alumni Network, and they said I can't anymore. So I even tried literally a couple of years ago because I needed a report. Get those reports, especially for your market, for your industry, for your vertical, and see how the changes are year to year, so you can at least, even when you leave this place and you can't get those reports, there's a good guesstimate that you can have about your market, right? So then, obviously, you go into productization, whether it's service or a product itself. Then you go into, okay, how am I going to, if somebody wants my thing, how do they get a hold of me? If I want to tell someone about this, how do I do that, right? Your outreach strategies. And then you also have to kind of think about, okay, let's say I do get a customer. How do I take care of them? Do I have the right things in place? So we start thinking about these things when we say, okay, I want to grow. I want to take this to market. Then usually what happens next is we go like, cool, I've learned those things. Here's my target market, right? Here are my target personas, customers. Here's the channels that I'm going to use. Here's my differentiation, right? Here are the people that I'm going to partner up with, my affiliations to give me better ground, a better speed, and all those things. And then usually we go to, okay, now that's that, I want to be more specific. I don't want everyone between 18 and 35. I want to actually go after people that is 28 to 35. So you start getting more and more tailored, targeted. ICP is ideal customer profile. So you establish one, right? We call them silly things like software engineer Sally, and then she has demographic info and psychographic info, right? You create this ideal customer in your head and then create profiles for them because they're all different. Their behavior is different. And then you go into, okay, so I've done all these things. I know my things that are here, and I have figured out who I'm going to talk to. Now I'm going to be like, okay, let's build some messaging. Let's go get these people, right? Let's go make sure we're in front of them. And again, assets and SOPs, that's common practice. Most of us in the early startup phase don't even touch this because we're in the go phase. That's okay. What's important is don't forget about them. Just make sure it's a task item that's completed at the end of the day. And what I mean by that is give yourself a milestone, right? It doesn't have to be daily. But build those in time, because when things pass by, sometimes we get less accurate about depictions. Sometimes we get lazy about our depictions. You use better vocabulary when it's fresh. So build those out for yourself over time, right? And after all that, you go like, here are my metrics that I'm going to go after. These are going to be my success factors, and I'm going to have a blast. And then, just like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. And the market will punch you in the face, right? So what are you going to do? What do we usually do after we're done with all of this? We all do it. I promise you we all do it. Billionaire wunderkinds that are 28 years old do it, right? Old white people that have been in business for 55 years do it. Rookies do it. Geniuses do it. We always do this. After we figure this out, it's how we are wired as human beings. Now we have something on our mind, and it's become a vision. And I have a goal towards it, and I can see my steps towards it. So what we usually do, especially as an early stage entrepreneur, is we go like, let's get our hands wet. Let's get our feet wet. Let's get into it, right? So we take all those things and go like, all right, here's what we're going to try to accomplish, right? And then here's how we're going to accomplish it in this timeline. We'll do an internal kickoff as a team, get everybody situated, everybody ready to go. We'll do an external kickoff. People know, media knows, all great, awesome, this is going to be great. And then we're like, and after we get some results, get some answers, get some customers, we'll do a review, and we'll optimize, and we'll just keep doing that, and we'll make $1 zillion. Here's the situation. That's true to a certain extent. But do you remember what I told you guys before? There's a what between marketing and sales? Thank you. Right? There's a gap between marketing and sales. So what does this mean? Right? After we make all these beautiful plans, and I'm going to share this with you, we forget what drives success for marketing is traffic. Does everybody get what that means? Right? Marketing isn't there to go like, hey, guess what? I've designed a campaign ad, and they're going to make this much money. I have never heard a marketer say, this is going to make this much money. But I've heard them say, oh, it's going to get 1 million eyeballs. Who wants to deal with 1 million eyeballs? So what ends up happening is marketing, right, is focused on traffic. Sales is incentivized. Their performance is driven by conversions. What this means, ladies and gentlemen, is we all always grouped it together. Sales and marketing, sales and marketing, sales and marketing. Well, here's the ugly truth. They're not best buds. They're not best buds. They bump heads all the time. Because what ends up happening is sales is going like, I hate this campaign. There's 5,000 leads. I have to find a diamond in the dirt. Screw these guys. They send everything. Then you talk to marketing going like, hey, maybe we can, make this a little bit more effective, a little bit more selective. Marketing goes like, no. Because last quarter we got 1 million traffic. Now our goal is 1.2. You're telling me to bring it down by 20%. I'm not reporting that. Tell sales to get better at their job. It's a stalemate. This is why you need a sales playbook. This is why you need to evaluate with ROE, because it bridges the gap, right? So here's another quick depiction. So when we said it bridges the gap, right? We talked about sales and marketing. It's like a chicken and an egg situation. The most important thing is to remember is these quotes, right, obviously are my silly quotes. That's not what they said. But at the end of the day, some of the things that made them successful was literally this approach. But it worked. It worked for a specific time and frame. The reason this doesn't work anymore is, remember when I talked about marketing going like, sales need to get better at this job. Sales going like, marketing needs to do a better job finding qualified ones. That's why inside sales exists. That's why sales playbooks exist. Because what you can do is, hey, say, here's the strategy, here's the process. Here's what we're looking to establish as a desired outcome. We're going to test it. We're going to see how these marketing campaign leads are working. And based on the data about how good the sales is doing its job, if we see that the results are good or bad, that gives us a good inclination that I can trust in the data to make sure I make the necessary changes on both sides of the aisle. So you don't do marketing expenditure that's unnecessary or ineffective, or you don't waste sales' time with unimportant conversations, right? Now, one of the important things is when you have this kind of an approach, right, if you actually go back and think about it a little bit, you had the sales versus marketing, you're trying to bridge that gap. The reason you want to use a playbook, and I keep repeating myself because I want it to settle in, it allows you to have a standard that everybody can abide to with a tailored approach, right? It's like mass one-to-one buying experience. Those two are oxymoronic a little bit, but it will settle in. Now, the reason I said that is because if you actually use a sales playbook, what's going to happen is you're going to be able to say whether you've never done something like this before or you're trying to change something or alter it, right? Trying something a little bit different. In all instances, when you use a sales playbook, the sales playbook is going to be able to let you know, hey, here's what the sales team is doing with it. Here's what leads they used, where those leads came from, what they look like. Here's the strategy or the sales playbook. Does this lead align with who we designed this sales playbook for? Oh, wait, it's not. That's why we don't use these leads for the sales playbook anymore. Oh, yes, it is. Great, let's put it into the playbook. You know what? The playbook works, and the conversions are coming. It seems like the lead and the sales, the marketing and the sales are working good together. Or you might find out that, hey, the lead and the contact information, all great. The problem is they're not engaging. So maybe it's the wrong persona. Okay, let's revisit our persona. Maybe we need a more engaging persona to target. You can get very granular, very effective, and deliberate by leveraging a sales playbook. Again, you got to make sure you focus on the return on effort as the frame though. So let's do this. Over here, as you can see, ROI, we talked about it, rule of thumb, right? How much did I put in? How much did I get back out? Okay. So let's have a quick conversation about these questions real quick. So if your ROI approach is how much did we put in, right? How much did we get out compared to how much we put in? How do you know that what you're putting in should be considered for that pipeline? And if any, how much? Or to which pipeline, right? Best example. Let's say we're doing an event here, and then you have a cubicle. Great. Now I'm an event lead. Then you did another event, but now you have a different campaign source for that lead. I showed up to that event as well. And you got me on as a lead again. So all of a sudden, I exist in your system twice. And I promise you, especially in the beginning stages, nobody's doing a really good data hygiene. So then what ends up happening is if you had two salespeople, and one of them you said, hey, you go after these campaign leads, and you go after those campaign leads, right? We did two event campaigns. I showed up on both. Now both of your people are calling. Both of them are trying to get a hold of me. What if I get annoyed? Now I'm not answering to any one of them. And they keep reaching out. It's a waste of their time. It's a waste of a lead resource. That's why it's important to understand when you're doing a sales playbook, when you're trying to execute something that has strategy ingrained into it, you have to have a mentality of where should my efforts go to? Because if you just look at ROI, in that situation, you would say, great, we got 2 leads from those 2 events. You didn't. Another quick thing that I want to touch on is, okay, so let's say I did an event campaign here, and I had a sales playbook for it, and it went well, right? It was a good playbook, good strategy. Okay, can I directly use it over there? Maybe, maybe not. We got to make some decisions, right? We got to have some conversations before we fully believe in it or change it. Okay, so I still have to make a decision. I still have to evaluate. All right, let's see. we talked about, okay, should we be using an existing one or a new one? Well, what if, right? There are different playbooks, but should they be based on campaigns? Or should they be based on industry? Or maybe title? Or maybe region? So we need a mechanism, right? Understanding what a sales playbook is great. Understanding what a return on effort, why a return on effort is important is great. But at the end of the day, we have to understand how it impacts our business to figure out what we need to do, right? So it goes all the way down to now, I'll finish with this, right? Because it is important. What if you go like, I believe in that sales playbook. I've used it before, it worked. I believe in the process we have. All we have to do is change the messaging. Great test idea, but make sure when you test that idea, you don't change anything in the process here. Because as soon as you change one step, it's a different playbook. This is why it's an anal thing, right? It's not easy to grasp, it's not quick to do. But I promise you this, when we finish our practices today and do the workshop, for those who actually are interested in it a little bit and put in the time, you're going to be able to start doing this, right? Because it's small scale for you right now. You're not trying to do this with thousands of customers. That's the beauty of it, right? You can actually try and get your hands dirty, and it will not harm you to get your hands dirty. All right, so this is how it's done. Because if you go like, I don't know which one of those I'm supposed to do, it's not your place to decide. No scientist ever starts a test and goes like, this is the answer I'm going to find, right? You go like, this is what I'm hoping for, but I'm open to anything. That's why when you're having those questions, should I change the messaging? Should it be separate? Can I use an existing one? Whatever the case is. Once you've done your due diligence and deductions, let the test mentality run for you, because guess what? You have a standardized process with your sales playbooks. You know how to evaluate it with the return on effort. Run the test. Once you have enough data, you can go like, bad one, and kick it to the curb. And Richard Branson does this very effectively, by the way, with companies. Like with companies. When we asked him on Twitter, like, what was his suggestion for us as serial entrepreneurs, he literally said, let go of your babies. If you understand how to let go of your babies and not feel too prideful of what you're trying to accomplish, but focus on what you're accomplishing, be present, it's going to be a lot easier, right? So we test, right? Instead of trying to answer those questions with an exact answer, once you have a good deduction and you have a good methodology and process, go test it out. This in engineering is called agile, right? You have to do tests in a certain time frame, which is true too, right? So when you think about it, it's a good idea to want to test, but let's be honest. You guys want to be executives. As an executive, would you be okay with a test that is unlimited time? No follow-up items, right? No actionable results. That's not a test, that's a wish list. For it to be a test, it has to have a timeline, right? For it to be a test, it has to have purpose. That's why we started this meeting with desired outcomes, right? So when that happens, when you think about it, right, one of the things that I did want to kind of loop it back to is when you have the return on effort frame and you're trying to test, it allows you to look at how you test, what you test, when you test it, with who, with what system, right? When. The 5 W's and 1 H concept doesn't go away. Another thing that I do want to touch on, and this is something as a side note, have you heard of the Kaizen methodology or the 5 Whys? That's as much deep as you need to go in. So when you're doing analysis, if you ask yourself why 5 different times in different angles, and you've answered to your best of your capability, run the test. That's basically what Kaizen says. And Kaizen, just so you know, is the methodology that brought up just-in-time production. If you don't know what just-in-time production is, I suggest you Google it. It's a marvelous thing in engineering, in my eyes at least. Good job, Toyota. All right, let's see. Okay, so we talked about a little bit about customers, demand gen, lead generation, right? Let me ask the group. How do you know if you're being successful up until this point? Like, how do you feel as individuals? Are you comfortable with your idea? Do you believe it's going to succeed? What do you think is your hurdles? Let's touch on that a little bit, right? So how do you currently value your success, and how do you know what to improve? Anybody? Nice, okay. And what kind of feedback loop do you have? Okay, yeah, okay. Is it something that's active on a daily basis, weekly basis?
They have a very active Discord, actually.
Nice. So in that case, I'm assuming you're more than likely either seeing some of the commonalities and going like, this is something I need to pay attention to, or maybe this is urgent, or hey, this is important, but it's not urgent, right? Start building it out a little bit in terms of what you want to address. Has that ever driven how you sell what you do? Nice. So when you do that, right, imagine doing that with a Discord. I'm assuming you have a couple thousand people on there. Okay. So now imagine there's 1 million of them. That's why what I'm trying to say is, if you build a test, right, and it's a process, once you figure out how it works, it also allows you to plan ahead in terms of what kind of a growth you're looking for, what kind of talent you need, right? These are critical things for entrepreneurs, because I can tell you this, we've taken bad advice. We have. And we lost $1 million in 8 minutes because of it. Ask Phil, he will not talk about it. He just won't, right? It will happen. This is why one of the most important things that I can urge you to do is understand that when we say sales playbooks, it is a concept for you to figure out how you can be more effective with your communications towards your customers, coming in from your customers, how that can empower your internal successes and effectiveness, but also because of what you're doing. Because when you have a good feedback system with your customers, they will let you understand how they like to be sold, when they like to be sold. So all you need to do when you have a sales playbook is go like, let me just change those parts. All right, guys, keep going. Instead of, all right, let's have a meeting, Bob, Billy, Bobby, whatever, who your salespeople are, right? And then go like, here's what the customers want. And then Billy's going to be like, nah, man, you know, not my customers. Like, it takes away the subjectivity, right? So, as I warned you in the beginning, here comes the notes section, right? We're going to do some math. Now, it's not going to be super hard math, I promise you. It's not going to be integrals and all that kind of stuff. I don't need you to draw a cylinder with your one finger, I guess. I don't know. So, how does ROE impact your business? Let's get into it. As we said before, right, return on effort houses insights from the transformational elements of a business. Whether it's your people, it's your process, it's your systems, it's your data, it takes things into consideration. Why? Well, let's take a look. Your return on effort with simple calculation, right, is simply saying, hey, how many conversions did you have in your sales playbook after the desired outcome attainment? What does that mean? And we're going to do some examples together, don't worry. Very simple. If I forgot I have a microphone. Sorry, media. If I, let's say, want $10,000 in 10 days, right? And I did my best, and then I saw that, you know what, I actually did $10,000 in 7 days, 8 days. And then I did another 1,000. Now, my goal was 10,000. I did 11,000. Most of us would feel happy in that regard. But what's actually happening is you got to look at your return on effort. Because if you're making $10,000 in 8 steps and only 1,000 in the last 2, maybe those last 2 steps and their incremental value is a trade-off for your time. Meaning, what if you did not spend doing the last 2 steps to make another $1,000, took that time to get more leads into the top of your funnel, and if you remember, I said it took us 8 steps to get to 10,000, and I'm losing 1,000 by not doing the last 2 steps. And we're going to do an exact calculation. So you can calculate your trade-off and say, how much money am I leaving on the table not doing these activities because their incremental value is low? And I put that time to the top of my funnel so that I can get into more and more of those desired outcome conversations that happens in the first 8 steps. Because if I get through the first 8 steps, I'm making $10,000. Again. So, let's take a look at a quick example. What did I do with my clicker? There you go. All right. Now, it's a simple ROE sample, right? Whoever wants to do that from now on is just for my own personal sake. I love doing simple sample because somebody is going to actually start cracking up at the end of tonight. You're going to remember it, whether it's in the bathroom or in the shower, you're going to go like simple sample, and that's going to stick with you. So, that being said, desired outcome of the project, $80,000 in the pipeline, right? Now, this is not closed revenue. It says, hey, I want to see $80,000 worth of conversations in my pipeline because I know that's a good indication of how much I'm going to close. Okay? It's a 10-step cadence, but the goal is set at $100,000. Why do you think there's a desired outcome that's lower than the goal? Think about a guess. I don't care if you say turtles. Close enough, but it's more so the other way around. It's human psyche. You always put 20% on top of your actual number as your ambitious goal. And that's what you want to hit, right? Because if you don't fall in that, in this case, if you don't shoot for the moon and you can land on the stars and you're still fine. And the other thing is, every salesperson is like this. I've never seen this, and trust me, like I had to do this all the time. You will have salespeople that are so good, they will do half of what they're supposed to do because they're doing double the conversions of everybody else. So they're like, I'm comfortable, man. And you're like, go, because there's seasonalities, there's all these things you don't know. You're a good one, go get it. So when you actually give people an actual goal, and this is for owners, right? When you actually give people 100%, if you told people the goal is 80, they're going to land closer to 60 and 70. So always put 20% on your objectives, especially for your teams, right? Fail safe. Now, if my desired outcome is 80,000, look at this. I have a cadence in a sales playbook. It is 10 steps, and by the end of step 7, apparently I'm attaining $80,000 in the pipeline. Remember return on effort, right? Our major premise, know thy return on effort. So I'm going like, as a manager, as an owner, hold on a second. So if I made 80,000 by step 7, how much did I make in the next 3 steps? I made 25. If you're catching a trend, I am over my goal. Most managers and most owners go like, hey, how did we do last month? Oh, we did $5,000 more, because if you add 80 plus 25, 105, right? I did 5% better. Great job, team. Here's some bonuses. Here's the problem with that. If you actually focus on the minimal incremental value here, just because it makes your goal look better, right? And the same thing applies to shareholder value. What you're missing out is the trade-off on you're leaving $50,000 on the table. Tenfold of a return. You were excited about 5% extra. You left literally 50% extra on the table. Here's why. Because if I take this, right, and I say, you know what, let me do a quick analysis. I'm going to apply return on effort and say, let's say I let go of these 3 activities, right? I want to calculate trade-off. Now, why am I showing this graph like this? Well, very simple. Because if, let's say my team has, reached step 7, now instead of doing these 3 activities that bring me 25,000, they are going back to the top 3, right? Repeating the same process. Now, while they're repeating that process, if we continue to play the way it is, it would have made $25,000. So while the team is doing these 3 steps, I lost $25,000. Did that make sense to everybody? Okay, I'll paraphrase it. Ready? So, this was the play, right? You have salespeople, or it's you, doesn't matter. You had 10 steps, and you did all 10 of them. And you did $105,000. Kudos, you did 5% more. But because you know return on effort, you were like, where did I accomplish my desired outcome in this sales playbook? How long did it take? And you see that by step 7, you reached your desired outcome. So now your curiosity is up. You're going like, wait a second. If I don't have to do these 3 steps, and I can invest that time, and instead of doing these 3 steps, I go back to the top. Would it be a good trade-off? Well, for you to do that, let's say you complete those 7 steps, right? You reach the desired outcome. Instead of doing these 3 steps, you're going to go back to the top, which is why I have here again, right? You're going to go back to the top of your funnel. So while I'm doing these 3 steps instead of these, right, because it's going to take the same time frame, I'm going to go like, okay, so whenever I do these 3 steps, and because I'm not doing these, I'm losing $25,000. Because if I was doing these 3, I was getting $25,000 more, right? So I left that on the table. Okay. And then I see that I have to spend time to do another 3 steps. Well, I let go of this 3, so it comes back to here again. That's minus 50%, right? And my math is so horrible that I did 50K. It's actually 30K. As an old engineer, I do apologize. But basically what you will see is, instead of doing this play once and making $105,000, you're evaluating, if I let go of this minimal incremental value here, is it worth it? And you do the play twice. When you do the play twice, you end up with $30,000, not 50, $30,000 more in your pocket. That's the return on effort. Understand where you're, as an owner, where your salespeople's team should go towards, versus, hey, great job, you did 5% better. That's awesome. Can we do better? Right? So that's how you do ROE in your pipeline. When you use a sales playbook and you have a cadence, you go like, where did I attain the desired outcome? After that, what was my value incrementally? Can I potentially let go of that for bigger gains at the end? It's as simple as that. But, as you can imagine, in real life, it's a little bit harder because you got to remember all these things. And that's why you can reach out to me whenever you want to. So, let me give you 3 basic cases of how you do rules of return on effort, right? You've seen this example. Oh, it's at the bottom. I reached my desired outcome. I can cut this. It makes it work for me. Or it might be towards the very top. This is rare. If you ever design something where literally within 40% of your efforts you're getting your desired outcomes, you more than likely overshot your strategy, right? Because if all of this value can be offset by this, yeah, we've definitely overstretched our strategy. No need for that. But it's not a bad scenario, right? Because no matter what, you're fine. Here's the tricky one. You will end up in situations, and you will see data, where for some reason, at the end of step 3, most of your outcome is there, right? Most of your money is there. But it doesn't get to the desired outcome until it finishes. And you see that in the middle, there's just nothing going on. You're not getting enough engagement. There's not enough conversions happening, whatever the case might be. In these instances, you can't be sure whether or not this lull period is just, some kind of a time frame issue, or there's something happening in the market, whatever the case might be, right? So your best bet is, instead of cutting it, because you don't know if there's value in that time frame or not, or why, and you can't control the market, you fuse them. You say, can I take it from 4 steps to 2 steps there? So I can save myself some time, still establish that nurture element, let them have their time as a prospect, and then come back to me. But overall, I'm still saving 2 steps out of 10. So 20% efficiency improvement. Why does this matter? How much time do you think, when you grow as an organization, for yourself or for your people in your organization, how much time do you think your salespeople will have to execute direct revenue generating activities? how much time in the day do you think they actually do activities that contribute to your direct revenue as a company? Shout a guess. So let's say the work day is 8 hours. How many hours do you think they actually do revenue generating activities? Definitely does not believe in humanity. Who else? 4 hours? 5, we're getting there. Here's the trick. If they work every single minute of the workday, it's 6.5 hours. Out of those 6.5 hours, I promise you, an hour and a half is just going to go out the waste. Nobody works like that. So you come back down to 5 hours. Out of those 5 hours, well, here's the trick. You only have 5 hours. You have 3 different time zones in the United States. How are you going to make sure you make the right calls at the right time? This is one of the reasons why it's important that when we look at this one, it might not look like much when we cut down 2 steps, but if there's a 10-step sales playbook and you're cutting 2 steps, that 20% increase in time given back to your salespeople allows them to spend more time doing direct revenue generating activities because they don't have to source leads, they don't have to move anything, none of that stuff, right? So that's why in each cases, and more than likely this is going to be common, 80, 90% of the time, and that's also more common than this.
So 2 things that I think are important that you brought up that you kind of didn't drill too far down on. So when you were talking about getting the outcome, like how that resource, but like this salesperson or that salesperson, one of the other reasons for setting a desired outcome and having that buffer on top is because if you have one salesperson, it's one thing, you can judge that person. But in reality, as you grow and scale, you're going to have 2, 3, 5 salespeople. They are not equal. They will never be equal, no matter who you hire or how you get there. And so you're compensating for that salesperson who's going to be at 120% of quota all the time because they're that good, and the one who's going to come in at 70% all the time because while they work really hard, they're just not going to hit that close ratio that the other person does. So that buffer basically allows for that gap.
Absolutely.
That sits there.
Absolutely.
But that's because he's the sales guy who works that 6.5 hours a day and doesn't work in the United States, whereas that guy that's hitting 140% of his number, or girl, who's there, because early in my career, there were 2 of us at Apple who consistently did that, 1 male, 1 female, me and 1 other. So I kind of know how that works, who were working 10 hours a day. But that's going to happen no matter what, just so we're clear, because that is the individual. That is not a requirement for them. It's just that person and how they operate. There are also people who are unbelievably effective in 6 hours a day. And they're good with that because they hit 100% or 110%, and they're fine with that. And you have to learn, as the manager of those people, to be fine with that too, because if they're hitting their quota, that's all you can absolutely require. And then there's people like me who are a little crazy, right? Who, the problem is, it depends on how you set the program too. So if you set an incentive where there are these big accelerators on their compensation, the rule in sales is he or she who dies with the most toys wins. That is the rule at the end of the day. And that means that they're always going to go that extra mile for that because that's how they think. So it wouldn't matter what the number was, the goal was still to achieve like way above the number. Doesn't make any difference.
I can tell you, like, honestly, what Joy is saying is very true. When I started the T-Mobile program, I was one of the 2 innovation coaches that T-Mobile ever started, right? And we told them straight up, like, this is what we're doing here, this is what we're going to implement. But instead of telling the team, because they knew, right, they all sign commission letters, especially for a salesperson, you can't just Tell them you'll make whatever you want. No salesperson works that way, right? So they signed commission letters where they knew their goal was 12. And I told them our goal is 20. They're like, nah, I'm sure that I saw 12. And I was like, nope, it's 20. And when I explained to them, that's because it's going to be 20 in January. We are in October. We get ready now so that in the future, all of y'all can be comfortable even when the quotas increase, because it's sales, quotas always increase, right? Even from a management perspective, when you actually come from that angle of saying, hey, this is what we're supposed to accomplish, right? And this is your playing field. Most good salespeople go like, all right, I got my measurements, I'm off the door, right? And just a quick example of why not every salesperson sells the same way. I had a guy named Tim Salerno, who was Tony Salerno, one of Tony Salerno's sons. If you don't know who Tony Salerno is, take a look at the Italian mafia movies. He was such an incredible salesperson. I've heard him say on the phone to people that said, oh, I'm in a meeting, blah, blah, blah. He was like, all right, I don't want to waste my time or yours, but don't wait too long. I ain't selling mattresses. And then he would hang up. I can't tell you how many times people would just go, did you just, and like send an email back, go like, what the, because they don't expect that. But if you're not Tim Salerno, people might find that rude because it's your character that comes through, right? That's one of the reasons why it's a talk track. It's like a decision-making tree, not like just say this word. All right, so going into it, these are going to be easier. Now, we talked about the 80-20 rule. Why are we talking about Pareto law in the midst of learning this new formula, this new concept of sales playbooks? It's very simple. This is for you as owners to understand your effectiveness and understand your team's effectiveness. We have seen return on effort as a frame help us understand how we can be more efficient, right, in our sales process using a sales playbook. This will allow you to understand how you can be more effective. So if you combine the two, you come with the ROE frame and say, can I be more efficient with the process? Yes, okay. And then you come to the other side on the delivery, right, instead of the operations, and then go like, can I be more effective at it too? Yes, great. So if you combine the two, it's not addition, it's a multiplication. Usually that's when you see like companies do the S curves instead of the bell curves and all that kind of stuff. It happens in that chasm. So the biggest thing that I can tell you is, now we know the Pareto law, right? 80-20 rule, we talked about it. Because this is business development, because this is growth, in our case, it's basically saying, hey, top or the best 20% of your leads, contacts, accounts, whatever you guys are targeting, right, is going to, whoa, what's going on? There you go. Is going to generate 80% of your successes or your output. Okay, so we're business development, right? Leads, contacts, prospects. Our outputs are either I want an appointment scheduled. Best example I can give you, for most growth or go-to-market strategies, the first goal is, can we set appointments? Are those appointments being held? If so, are they becoming opportunities? And are those opportunities closing as a win case, right? In the win column. So when you think about it, when you use this approach and you go like, okay, so I'm putting in leads into my playbook and I want appointments held. I want opportunities set. How can I use Pareto law? I can go check what my opportunities are like to give me information on what the top 20% of my leads look like, what they're made of. So I'll give you guys a quick description, right? So when you're using Pareto law in business development, it's for pipeline health. Now remember pipeline, it's the business that we did not close. Since we know pipeline is not 100%, you don't close 100% of your pipeline. That's very, 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 very hard. So now I have to go like, okay, I need to understand who in my pipeline I should target first. Because for me to be effective here, I'm looking back and saying, I've been good here. What does that look like? Oh, they look like these kinds of leads. Great. Now, can I find more of those kinds of leads in my pipeline? Because I know I can do better with them. And if I put them in my pipeline, instead of spending time with others that I'm not so great at, I can be more effective. Here's the beauty of it, right? It's very simple. You ask 3 questions. You go like, okay, out of all my successes, because remember, 80% of the output, right? What does the commonalities look like for 80% of my successes that I established for myself, right? And we're going to do some examples. Once you determine that 80% and what they look like, right? Then you go like, okay, what kind of leads, contacts, or prospects were these before they became this winning opportunity? So you go back and figure out, oh, this is what the top 20% of my pipeline looks like, my leads look like. And then you go back and say, okay, how many of them are left in my pipeline that has those kinds of commonalities that I've seen with my successes? And then all you do is go like, okay, so I know what they're made of. I know how many of them are left in my pipeline. What's my conversion rate? This much. Great. This is how many are sitting in the pipeline for me to go get. Why is this important? Well, remember the effectiveness part? When you have a sales playbook and you use the sales playbook and you get successes and you look at those successes and say, hey, what do these leads look like when they first start? Oh, they look like this. Okay, so with this play, if I go after these kinds of leads, I know I do a good job. How many more of those can I find? That's what we're trying to do. That's how you improve your effectiveness. So real quick, right? And I'm going to do this over here so you guys can see. All right. I'll keep that there. So your goal was 24, right? And what did you guys do? All right. Attained is 20. Now, this might happen to you. This might happen to your salespeople. This is not bad. You're not too far off. You're looking at, okay, you know what? I'm trying to see how I can improve 10 to 20%, right? Not that far off. Okay, so what we need to do is go like, hey, when you got to 20, what did they look like? Okay, let's take a look. As I told you, I will give you the amount of leads left in the pipeline, right, and what your leads look like. So you see that the 20 appointments, right, 80% of the 20 appointments were comprised of either director of ops and enterprise for a software company, director of IT and mid-market manufacturing company, or a manager of operations in a mid-market SaaS company. Those three you kept on booking with, you kept on getting successes with, right? And they made up at least 80% of your 20 output. So when that happens, right, you have 200 leads, 100 leads, 100 leads. If your conversion rate is 20% across the board, what I'm looking at is like, okay, so 20% of this, 20% of that, 20% of that, or just add them up and do 20%, right? However you want to do it. You're looking at 80 successes sitting in your pipeline. If your goal is 24, you're looking at about 3.5 months of just 100% waiting for you. Here's why that's important. If you know your business, you know your seasonality. If you know your seasonality or you're trying to figure it out, this becomes even more important. Because what you can do is stress test, meaning I did this, I figured out who those people are, I'm going to go, 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 go. Once I run through them, did I do 80? Did I do 90? Did I do 70? Okay. So next time what you do is you actually keep moving to see if any more of those are going to come. But if they don't, you can see where it all kind of comes together, all those commonality people. And what's funny about that is this is how most organizations discover that they're good at an adjacent market, that they're good at an adjacent product, right? Because they figured out, when I do this to this level, somehow this popped out of nowhere. And that's how you actually become more and more and more continuous improvement ingrained. So what I'm going to do is show you guys what it looks like in the real world. And I made sure there's 20 examples there, right? So it's exact calculation. In here, I just gave it to you, right? Because I wanted us to do a simple calculation so you could understand. All you do is multiplication, right? First thing, what do my leads look like? Oh, they're director of operations in an enterprise company for software, or director of IT, mid-market and manufacturing, or this. Cool. Then I know what my conversion rate is, so I know that's the last thing I'm going to multiply everything with. All I have to do is go like, how many of these leads are left in my pipeline that I'm not working yet, right? That's it. You take the leads that are left in your pipeline, multiply with your conversion rate, and voila, you're done, right? So if you take a look about what it would look like, this is a baby sample, right? Obviously, Excel files are not this short or not this small when you export them from a system, but if you look at it here, you will see like a distribution of, oh, there is about 5 enterprise software director of ops. There's about 5 mid-market manufacturing director of IT, and about 4 mid-market SaaS manager of IT. So when you add those up, those 3 add up to 16. Why did I do it that way? Because 16 is 80% of what? 20, the part of the law. Now that could be 15, 17, no problem, right? It doesn't have to be exactly 16. All you have to do is make sure you're within the vicinity of 80% and go like, oh, so these 3 types made the 80%. Let me go see how many of those are left in the pipeline and multiply it with my conversion rate. Any questions on the part of the law? So, remember, right? Return on effort is more of a frame for decision making. You can use it to evaluate efficiency and help your cost of goods sold. You can use it to help your effectiveness by leveraging part of the law in how you execute what you execute, right? All right, so last one and we're done. I know it took a little while, I apologize. I want to make sure I have my watch next time actually. So, you know how to leverage return on effort. You know what the part of the law stands for, how you want to use it. And I understand I gave you guys a fire hose of information, which is why I'm going to end with my contact information. If you have questions on it, let me know. I do this all day, every day. I won't get bored. You might get confused again, but I won't get bored, right? So, brace yourselves. A workshop is coming. Here's what the workshop is going to be. I am going to pull this up real quick. There we go. I'll put this back on there. So, this is going to be quick because we're not going to do value propositions. We're not going to do pain points. You know why? Because we don't have a common company to figure out right now, right? That's on you guys to figure out for your value propositions and pain points. But what I'm going to do is give you guys a workshop frame to understand how to develop a sales book. We touched on return on effort. We touched on part of the law. Those were important because if I just gave you a sales book and you do something with it, what do you do next? That's why the ROE and the part of the law matters. But at the end of the day, you need a tool, right, a mechanism in place to be able to leverage ROE and part of the law. Something needs to generate the data that you're trying to evaluate. Here's how it goes. Let me ask you this. When you're targeting, when you're trying to define your ideal customer profile, you're trying to figure out where to target, give me some building blocks that you assess. I'll give you guys an example. Segment. Am I going to target enterprise level companies or am I going to target small, medium businesses, right? So I'll put that on here, right? So we're going to have segment. I would say take your notes here because some of these building blocks will always be there, right? You can keep adding to it. We have, depending on the customer, up to 32, right? But that gets too complex. So we're going to keep it to something simple, right? So I have segment. What else do you think I might have? What else do you think that might be a building block there that I want to actually tailor towards? All right. Seems like Joy knows this stuff.
Just throw a few out there.
Yes, thank you.
Also be like depending on what you're selling. You're selling to a consumer product, could be gender.
I'm going to do, there's the product. All right, segment, revenue, title, industry, product. I'm going to do 3 more because it's important. Region. exactly right, Geo. Sales motion, and lastly, account type. So here's why I added these. Because most of us are like comfortable here. We do it consciously, subconsciously, just because we're in the environment. We will think about it, right? You'll see another cohort member think about it. You're like, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. Let me think about that. Those will come naturally. Up until here. Here's why. Because most of us, the way our brains are wired, and if you watch Simon Sinek, he does a great explanation of this, right? We think inside out, emotionally, and then rationalize with logic. But we talk outside in. So the way we talk is like, so where do I want to sell this? How much am I looking for so that I can be comfortable about their budget? What are they like? Who do they sound like? These are simple things that we can think of. These ones, you got to be more strategic about, so you don't immediately think about it. But here's why I wanted to add those there. First thing, right? Account type. I'll give you guys one example, and then you can help me fill in the rest. Existing customer. What other account types do you think we might target? Yeah, there you go. Net new, right? Now, here's the tricky part. Can you guys guess another one?
A competitor's customer.
There you go. Let's see. Nice job, re-engagement. There you go. I'm gonna. Now you're killing me. It had a different name. Hold on. That's the sales motion. Engagement, but this is the people that left.
A previous customer.
There you go. No.
No, an existing customer is one that's currently buying from you. You're going to sell them something else.
Exactly. So existing customers like upsell, cross-sell, right? It's basically what every razor company does, right? They go like, here's a razor, don't worry about it. And you go like, yeah, I need more blades. And they go like, give us all your money. And you're like, oh, damn. All right. So, and as we've talked about, right, existing customers can have upsell, right? Hey, you already bought a, I don't know, microwave from us, now buy a car. Who knows? Cross-sell, right? Competitor customer, obviously you're trying to win over. Previous customer, you're trying to re-engage or win back. Also, if my handwriting is horrible, that's because my parents failed me. There you go. All right, net new, as you can imagine, right? It is full outbound.
And then renew, right? So you have to
Yeah.
in the motion, right? It would be a motion. It would be any of the renewal, right?
There you go, renewal. You're right. We did forget about that in the existing customer. So, here's the trick. If I was to ask you guys, hey, we should do a sales playbook. Do you guys all see why it's important? Yeah, we should. Okay. All right, so the sales playbook that we want to do, I want to upsell to existing customers, but I also want net new customers. This is one of those moments where you do not want to mix and match these. The last thing you want to do is talk to a net new customer as if it's an existing customer, and an existing customer as if it's a net new customer. It is very offensive. It is incredibly offensive when you, because think about it like this. More than likely, you guys are going to get to a point with your companies where you're like, there's going to be pride in it, right? You're going to be happy about it, and you're going to be able to get to a point where you can dictate your price a little bit because you have more leverage now. Imagine doing that, and one of your vendors sends you an email from one of their salespeople going like, hey, you're just the kind of people we want to talk to. And you go like, I know I had some IT issues, but it seems like you guys don't care at all about who I am. That's a big problem, right? So that's why when you make sure that you're building a playbook, make sure that you choose a notion specifically. Because on the other side, you do not want to do cold outbound versus a win over. Can you imagine if you're going to a competitor's customer? You know the competitor. You know the differentiation. You probably have a better idea about your competitor and how you compare. And all you're looking to do is make sure you go like, okay, I know I'm better at these 3 things. Can I get to the conversation on those 3 things, right? So it needs to be more specific, more targeted. With a net new customer, right, if you do that, the net new customer might just go like, what are you talking about? That's not my problem. Oh, I don't even use those guys, right? So don't kill yourself trying to shortcut things. Give yourself the time, prep yourself, prep your team, make sure that you understand that each sales book is tailored, especially for sales motions or account types. Don't mix those. Now, the other thing that you cannot mix is region. So for example, we call them NAM, like North America market, or EMEA is Europe, Middle East, Asia, European side of Asia, LATAM, Latin America, and APAC for, let's call Asia altogether. And I know Joy has witnessed this problem more so than any one of us, but one of the funniest things is when you get absolutely belittled by a German person. Do you know why? Because they're not.
We have German.
Oh man, I wish they were here. Because here's the best part. They don't do it like anywhere else in the world. They're not rude about it. They're rude to their friends. The way they put you down is very much so like, that's not how you say hi if you don't know me. Because in Germany, you have different ways of saying hi based on how much you know some person. Now imagine you go like, I'm going to send this plate to both North America and Europe, and I'm going to send it to Germany. Good luck. You're going to be blacklisted everywhere. And they have GDPR, right? There you go. See, I didn't even know that. So, okay. It's still net new. Because, absolutely, because and you're going to see, after we do this, right, we're going to finalize it with going like, okay, now we have to think about how these people might want to engage, where they might want to engage mostly, how often do they might want to engage, right? So all those come in there. Still net new, because have they bought from you yet? There you go. Right? As soon as they buy from you, I don't even care if they bought a penny from you, right? You can put them into existing customer because you can go like, hey, remember the penny deal that we made? It still works. So, please remember, region, sales motion, and account types, you cannot cluster them together.
One other thing I would say about region is I learned this in the U.S. So there's different regions in the U.S. And the reality is the style, and I'm just going to use style because it doesn't change your sales play at all. You're still selling the way that you sell, but the style, the delivery, in say the South, and I know kind of you have to put Florida in that because it's its own thing, but even though geographically it's there, the Southeast is different than say the Northeast or the Midwest or the West Coast, and so you tend to divide the United States based upon some different areas. I could give you a bunch of different ways to chop that up and make it work, but I will tell you, the person who is going to be successful in the South is unlikely to be also successful in the Northeast, and vice versa. There are exceptions, but normally you do better, and definitely like they're different than the Midwest. So you can divide in thirds if you've got the right people on the East Coast, and that can usually work. Or you divide like, oh, I'm gonna kind of go West Coast, and I'll chop the other half here, and that kind of works. But it's just a different style. So things move much faster in the Northeast, as an example. No nobody wants to hear about your kid,
Mhm.
or what happened, or any of that stuff. And yet you can build this much more congenial relationship with someone who's in the South, and then the West Coast is like completely laid back. It's a completely different way of looking at it.
I'll give you guys an exact example, having worked all those territories with my teams. When I had to come in and sometimes actually close some conversations that we were having a tough time with and stuff like that. In New York, if they're like, what do you want? I'm like, I know what I want. What I need you to do is give me some time. And they literally just go like, why the heck so? And I'm like, because I'm Forbes listed entrepreneur, I don't waste my time. Do you waste your time? No. All right then, here's what we're gonna talk about. Like, it's very, what do you want? Get out the way, I got shit to do, right? Whereas if you do that in the Southeast, you're gonna get hung up on. Like, they're gonna be like, hi honey, what can I help you with? Well, I'm trying to figure this out. Oh, okay, well, he's not here today. Well, do you have his calendar? Yeah, okay, well, let's figure it. Like, it takes just as much time to get off of a phone call in the South to get into a conversation in the North, right? Like, and it's crucial because, as Joy was saying, when you're in North America, your written messaging, your cadence, right, might not have to change, but your delivery is gonna have to change. This is also why, if you develop a sales playbook, you can assess these things through data without having to go like, is it not, I'm not sure. You know why it's happening, right? So, we know we cannot mix regions together. We know we cannot mix sales motions or account types. Each one has to have their own playbook, right? But, guess what? Let's say you have product A and product B, right? Well, here's the thing. If the difference is just price and couple functionality, but the value, right, the context of the value and the pain points they address can be grouped together, you can group these products together. However, if one of them is a bicycle and the other one is a Katy Perry dolphin or shark, I don't know. Anyways, one of those things, you cannot group those together. So in these kinds of instances, use your best judgment. And this is why I said, once you learn how to kind of put this together, after you've learned the importance of ROE and Pareto law and how to leverage them, now you can actually let your creative juices out. This is your company. This is your initiative, right? Now you can go like, do I want to group the products? Yeah, I want to group them and test them that way. And if it doesn't work, maybe now you separate them. Now you're trying things one by one, right? Scientifically. You have control mechanisms that are the same outside of it, and then you can keep changing this to see what works better, right, with your prospect customers. The other thing, industry. So this is, again, it can be targeted, just one industry. It can be agnostic. We have many different software companies that we help that pretty much can work in any industry because it's a financial software, right? And they didn't necessarily build a niche for it. It's just generic. Okay, I can go after any industry because the value and the pain points are pretty much the same. However, let's say I have I know my best ones are telecommunication, healthcare, and then for the sake of it, let's say business services. Now I can have a product like the financial software that can be the same, or I might end up having such specialization that PA is great for telecom and healthcare as it is, and PB is great for business services. Do you know how this is put together? You come, and companies come with their marketing heads, sales heads, and their data people. What we do is we go like, hey, marketing, where do you get the best engagements? Which industry? They go like telecom. You're like, great, okay. Sales, how are you doing with telecom? They go like, I hate telecom. You're like, okay. And what industry do you like the most? And they go like, healthcare. You're like, okay, I'm going to put the healthcare there too. And then you go to the data people and you go like, hey, can you give me an idea about which ones bring the most amount of conversations, the most amount of pipeline, not just the dollar value. And the data goes like, oh, we get the most in business services. So now you're sitting there going like, how do I combine these? Here's the best part. With a sales playbook, you can establish templates for each one in your messaging. And your teams, especially if you have the software, right? And if you, I don't know if you're in that stage yet, some of these software pieces are expensive, right? Just fair warning. But there are softwares out there like SalesLoft, Outreach, that allow you to automate these things because you can just dump each one of these specific messaging as a template, and all you do as a salesperson or as the owner is go like, oh, this person is in telecom, that template. That person is in healthcare, that template, right? This is why a sales playbook is important. Because now you don't have your seller A and seller B doing two different things for telecom, two different things for healthcare, two different things for business services, and next thing you know, you don't know where your successes are coming from.
It also gives you, so the other thing is every industry or every persona, so for those who are selling products to consumers, you're going to have different things. Like if I think about your restaurant, there's going to be people who would resonate with the message that this is done because it's a firefighter own thing, right? So how you talk to them, meaning the exact same thing you're selling to multiple people, it's just changing the verbiage to match the industry or that consumer persona.
Absolutely.
So there's just different vernacular. We all do it in different areas. Like for you, it's like looking at things where it's like being focused. So you're taking that same thing and you're like, oh, why is that person doing it? Is it because they're vegan or is it because they're very health conscious? And so it's the same exact thing, just two different messages to get there.
And honestly, recycling is a great example of this. If you ask people why they recycle, there's a bunch of different reasons why. The value to the planet and them as an individual of pride factor is the same, but they have many different reasons why, right? So going back to what Joyce said, same thing applies, right? In the same logic as industry, you can have a director, you can have a VP, and this can be of operations, and this can be of IT, and you can have a manager of IT, let's say again, right? Now, why is the manager of IT and director of IT separate? Maybe you are targeting Delta Airlines and the director of IT needs to be something very specific, like enterprise architecture, microservices. There's only 2 of those people in Delta, even though there's hundreds of directors of IT. However, those 2 directors have many managers that they work with. So if you are not lucky enough to build engagement with those 2 directors, you can use the managers as influencers to try to keep your conversation and engagement going and build up to those sales cycles, right? So you can see that maybe you can group those or not group those, or you can say, hey, you know what? VP of operations for enterprise level companies also do understand technical stuff. So maybe I don't need to change too much between these 2 because of the value of the product is so fine that you don't necessarily need to separate them. This is why I keep saying this is a framework. Your ROE is how you evaluate your data, and your product law is how you make it more effective. Knowing how to do this, you can do your own tests. Because I don't know your products. I don't know your market like you do, right? I don't know your differentiation factors. They can all go in here. Because once you build this, right, let's say you go okay, I want enterprise and mid-market. They can be combined together, not too far off if you want to do combine. And let's say for it to be mid-market a little bit, you say, okay, I want something that's over $175 million in revenue, right? So it's, getting to the higher side of mid-market and side of enterprise.
That rarely happens in the beginning, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. These things, the way it starts is if you're trying to do this without knowing anything about your market or just your research, you haven't sold anything yet, right? What you do is you take your assumptions and dump it onto this canvas, right? You go I believe based on everything that I've done for my growth and go-to-market, I have to go to these segments. I have to be specific about the type of budget that my prospects have. I have to go after these titles. It seems like the best opportunity. Because what you can do then is take a step back, because the last thing you can add here is basically, hey, what are some of the pain and gain points of my business for these people in these industries for this kind of a company? What are my value positioning and propositions, right? In fact, you can even go what is my differentiation factor? I don't know if I typed that right. But at the end of the day, you can keep adding to this however you see fit to build your own test for your own company. Right? That's the beauty of it. So, to finalize, all you need to be able to do a sales playbook is have the right approach. And the right approach is you need to know what kind of returns you're getting for your efforts and your team's efforts, especially when it comes to sales, because that's where your cash flow comes from, right? Unless you're a marketing guru and you don't have any sales team, which kudos to you, right? Seriously. But if you do, or you have to be your own salesperson, keeping a good eye and having a good focus on your return on effort and going like, okay, I'm going to use this framework to build myself a test, establish my messaging, because here's the best part. Once you establish these points, they serve as the insights that you're going to have in your assets that you want to develop. Like, for example, when you want to write a use case. Hey, we've been helping enterprise and mid-market level organizations that are over this kind of revenue, and we've had conversations with directors of IT, VP of operations. What we've seen is that there's these kinds of challenges in the market that still preside, so we're coming in to help in this way and change the landscape like this. Done. Or you're talking to a prospect customer. Hey, what are you looking for? Oh, we're looking for upsell. That's perfect timing. You know why? Because we just finished an upsell program. You can always come back to this. And if it's not working, the flip side of the coin, right? It finishes like this. You go like, okay, is it not working because I'm not getting any engagement to my messaging? So if you're not getting enough opens, not enough clicks, not enough replies, maybe it's your messaging, right? Or your subject lines, or your call to actions. So you can play with those. However, if you're getting good engagement, that means you're doing a good job being relevant. But if you're not seeing the conversions, maybe something here is off. So you can start changing it one by one, and that's how you control your test.
So for those of you who were here, we had Stephanie Davidson, who's Agile. So she's on the Agile line. You remember we talked about the fact that Agile wasn't issues for development and kind of how these pieces are. You can see how you would apply like that Agile methodology to this particular process to kind of make it work much quicker. So I know it feels overwhelming.
Yeah.
In reality, it's just starting somewhere and filling in the data you have and doing some of the tests or asking some of the questions, and the other data comes. It just doesn't happen instantaneously.
Absolutely. Like right now, I can tell you, as a startup, your biggest challenge is going to be most of these might be assumptions. But the best part is if you actually put it into the framework and test your assumptions, at least you can, like Richard Branson says, kick your babies to the curb fast and easy, so it doesn't hurt you that much more. Or you figure something out that you weren't quite thinking, or you see an angle that you weren't quite thinking, and that allows you to course correct a little bit better.